example, if I'm, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the brick pizza place in Florent Park, that fire, that Madison was the first response to that? Am I correct in saying that? Or we were basically
The fire in Florent Park?
the pizzeria several years ago?
Right, right. They had volunteers there, but none were able to take the hose line into the building.
I don't think we're casting any aspersions
Yeah,
on any
no,
other
I'm just-
community, but
it's
I
just,
think
yeah.
the chief could very quickly explain the difference between how a volunteer community responds compared to the way Madison does, and why we're so fast at being able to do that. And
Yeah, I certainly did not mean
know,
anything.
I'm sure.
Well, first and foremost, our volunteers go directly to the scene. We get an immediate response upon any call. Trucks are rolling out the door within 30 seconds, and the volunteers meet us at the scene. And in all volunteer community, the volunteers would be expected to respond to the firehouse, and they would wait for a certain amount of individuals to arrive at the firehouse, board the fire apparatus before they responded to the scene. Could be 5 minutes, could be 10 minutes. It all depends.
Yeah, it's our response time that sets us apart from a volunteer squad. And we save more buildings, more lives, and avert greater disasters because of what we decided to do for the residents of Madison.
And it also allows us to provide many other services. We don't, it's just not all big blazes. We respond to a lot of other calls. We get a quick response on carbon monoxide calls. When the weather's bad and we're experiencing a nor'easter or something like that, we go out, we pick up tree branches, we do pump outs. We provide as many services as we can to the community.
Good.
Jean, yeah, a follow-up question regarding mutual aid. I think we're recognized in this area that we're the best. I'm sure you heard that before.
Well, thank you.
Now, the question is, we do mutual aid. That's kind of one kind of shared services. But however, we don't generate any revenue. Now, can you, is there any creative way that we can actually make this a revenue generator?
I'm not going to sugarcoat it, so the quick and easy answer is no, not at this point in time. Mutual aid was set up for one neighbor to help another neighbor.
Right.
Years ago, mutual aid used to be an embarrassment. It used to be the exception. 20 years ago, if you couldn't put your own fire out, it was a disgrace. But through the years, with all the state and federal mandates and regulations that we work under now, you're almost forced to call mutual aid. And so it's not unusual for us to go out of town 10 times a year or call help in 10 times a year. Because once you have an emergency and staffing positions need to be filled, no one department can fill them all. And if you don't start filling them quick in an expedient manner, then you're going to be held up to scrutiny and possible liability issues.
And the other part, Jeannie, is once we start charging the mutual aid community, we provide service. When we need their help, they would be charging us correspondingly. So I think there's a perception that we're involved in an adjacent community much more frequently than we are. It's really emergent, significant fires such as the one alluded to by Councilman Conley. We're not there as often as the perception is that we're in these adjacent communities. It's when there's a major multiple alarm fire when they need resources. And also maybe the chief could talk a little bit about the creative way they utilize the standby officer and the level of manning and the reimbursement for that officer to supplement, so we always have an adequate response in the event of a simultaneous event or a call out or a significant event in the community. Could you talk about that, Chief?
Yeah, we do utilize a standby man. He performs 2 standby shifts a week in between his regular shifts. So say, for example, if he works 2 days in a row, he's on standby the night in between. So he works a day shift, he's on standby that night, and he comes in for work the next day for a second day shift. Excuse me.
And what does that mean? So if there's an
So his responsibility would be on any dispatched alarm, he would respond to the firehouse, and he could perform multiple responsibilities. First and foremost, The standard in the fire service is 2 engines and a ladder truck to the scene as soon as possible. What we provide immediately is 1 engine and an aerial truck, if needed. It could be 2 engines if it's a sprinklered building. If it's a car accident, it could be the rescue truck and an engine. But the standby man would respond to headquarters and be responsible for a third due piece of apparatus if it was needed. So if it was a structure fire, he would respond with the second due engine and lay a supply line to the first due engine. That's his primary role. He could fill other roles. He could help out at headquarters in any way, whether it's making notifications for the incident commander, whether it's providing equipment at the firehouse. If somebody in a staff vehicle has to return and get equipment real quick, maybe absorbents, squeegees, brooms, shovels, whatever it might be, the standby man would would help get that equipment ready as well. He'd also be able to he'd also be available to handle a simultaneous call, which probably happens 10 to 12 times a year. So he's in headquarters by himself, everybody else is at the scene, another call comes in, at least it's an immediate response to a simultaneous call. And at least we can know immediately, is there anything going on at that other call?
And the pay for the standby man's not paid until he's, how's
Right,
that?
he gets paid hour for hour, and there is no...
That he's called in.
Right, there's no Sunday, 8-hour maximum or time and a half, double time on a holiday, 365 days a year. It's hour for hour.
Right, so an alternate, if we didn't have a standby man, is we would have.
You'd have 3 or 4 more firemen.
You'd have more firemen, yeah.
Right,
So.
right. And he's also, if you really want to look at it that way, the role that he fills, you're right, he avoids us hiring another guy around the clock for all the shifts, because he gives us an extra body.
Just one, not for this year's budget, but going forward, is there, or are there shared services opportunities and inspections and that type of routines for?
I guess there's always possibilities out there. I think for some of the larger communities, it'd probably be too much for us to handle. Believe it or not, we're all up to our eyeballs as it is. We have a fire subcode official, and we have a fire official, and we have 2 inspectors and administrative aides that help them. And everybody is out all day long doing inspections, doing pre-plans. So for us to, let's just use a neighboring community as an example. If they have a downtown like we do, it may be too much for us to try and do all the inspections we have in Madison, plus take on more inspections in another community. But if it's a small community, more of a rural community, anything's possible. We'd have to look at it, we'd have to examine it.
Someone else have any questions?
Yeah, I have some questions, comments. I don't know if anyone else in the room picked up on it, Chief, but when you first started your presentation, you began by commending the police chief. But then you spoke about how tight your budget is, and you've only asked for what was needed. I'm not sure the police chief would appreciate the inference. But having made that comment and teasing you, I do agree that your budget is tight. In some ways, I think these hearings is useful for the public and ourselves for what they show, even if we can't make cuts. So, for example, I look at your personnel level, your expenses for personnel and fringe benefits, and I'm comparing 2007 to the proposed budget for 2009. And just for the public's education and mine, without any increase in the number of personnel, your costs have gone up from 1.38 million in personnel to 1.5, fringe benefits from almost 350,000 in 2007 to almost $500,000. You put that together, and it's over a $500,000 increase. And I guess that's just the way these things go if you're maintaining the same level of personnel.